A king owes money to the men who guard his treasure. He cannot pay. He can accuse. Philip IV seizes their ledgers, locks their houses, and calls them traitors to the faith. Their Grand Master burns in Paris. Their name is erased by Rome. You want to know how power kills without a war? It uses debt, courts, and flame. To see how that could happen, we have to see how the order began. The Knights Templar were born in an age of crusade. They were men who took vows like monks and fought as soldiers. They wore white cloaks marked with a red cross. They kept houses across Europe and in the lands once called the Holy Land. They guarded roads and ferries used by pilgrims. They held stone castles on hard hills. They learned how to move money from town to town with a letter and a seal. Princes trusted them. Merchants trusted them. For 2 centuries they grew in land and in fame. When the last Crusader cities fell, their main task thinned and then slipped away. Their wealth and their reach remained. So did their enemies and those who envied them. In October of the year 1307, the first blow fell in France. At dawn in Paris, doors burst. Men were taken from their beds. King Philip IV had given the word. The charges were dark. He said the brothers had denied Christ. He said they had spat on the cross. He said that secret rites had changed them from men of God into men of lies. The shocks of that day spread through Europe. Many men confessed when pain and fear bent their wills. Many later took back those words when the pain had passed. Rome watched and judged. The Pope was Clement V. He sent orders to princes to arrest the brothers in their realms. Years of inquiry followed. Different lands reached different ends. In the year 1312, the Pope sent out a bull with solemn words. It said that the order would end for the peace of the Church. That is how a door closed on a famous name. Our question is simple. What happened after that door closed? What happened to the men? What happened to the land and to the houses? What happened to the name in memory? The answers are not one answer. The map of Europe gives many paths. Some paths hold courts and prisons. Some hold new orders. Some hold quiet farms and old men who say their prayers. First, the men. In France, where the arrests began, the trials were harsh. Some brothers who had withdrawn their confessions were judged as false penitent men and were burned. The Grand Master was taken to the stake in Paris. Others were kept in prisons or in the keeping of bishops. Some died there. Many lived on for years behind walls. In England, the line of mercy ran more strongly. King Edward was slow to believe the charges, then bowed to the papal order. The brothers were questioned by bishops. Most were not put to death. Many were sent to live in monasteries. They were told to do penance. They were given small stipends, clothing, or bread. Some grew old in cloisters and were buried in churchyards with plain stones. In the German lands, a number of courts found little proof beyond words taken under pain. Many brothers were set free with calls to repentance. In Italy and in parts of the Iberian realms, the picture was mixed. Some were held, some were released. The broad truth is this. Outside France, most Templars did not die by fire. They passed their later years in houses of the church or in quiet service. Second, the land and the stone. Templar houses and fields covered many miles. Church law said that their goods should pass to the order of the Hospital of St. John. On paper, that was clear. In practice, it was slow and full of dispute. Kings had needs and plans. Royal officers liked to pause when a rich estate lay in their hands. In England, the move took many years. The new temple in London passed through royal hands and noble hands. Only in the year 1338 did the hospital gain full control. Records from that time list rents, mills, and markets that now served a new order. In France, the crown kept back much and guided the flow of the rest. In the crown of Aragon, the king asked Rome for a different plan. A new military order took shape to hold the old castles and guard the frontiers. It was called Montesa. It was approved in the year 1317. In Portugal, the king worked with the Pope to found the Order of Christ. It opened a door for former Templars in that land. It took the great house at Tomar and other sites. It allowed men to serve without the stain that the trials had left on the old name. Third, the memory. For a time there was quiet. Farmers sowed and reaped under the eye of new stewards. Monks read in chapels that once held men with swords. Later, new tales grew. People said that ships of the temple had sailed from French ports on the night of the arrests. They said a treasure had been hidden in far valleys or deep halls. They said a holy cup had passed from hand to hand under a secret oath. These are stories of later centuries. They live in romance and in rumor. They do not rest on firm records. The records show pain, law, and slow change more than secret flights by night. Now we walk through the lands in turn. In France, the temple in Paris fell to the crown. Trials took place in halls near the great church. Some brothers told of rites that touched a cross in ways that seemed to deny it. Many later said they had lied to save their lives. Some who withdrew their words were judged as men who had returned to sin and were burned. Prisons held the rest. The king used the wealth to pay for war and for court. Many houses passed in time to the hospital, but the crown took its part first and last. In England, arrests began later. The crown had used Templar houses for loans and for the safekeeping of jewels. Bishops questioned the men with care. The judgment sent many to monasteries, not to the stake. Orders from the Pope said that the goods should pass to the hospital. The path to that end ran through years of delay. New temple passed from hand to hand. The final move to the hospital came in the time of a later king. By then, a great account had been written that set out income and charges for the English houses of St. John. In those lines, we can see the old Templar rents now paying for candles, for repairs, and for the order's work at home and abroad. In Scotland, the papal order met a hard field. Robert the Bruce was under sentence from Rome. The realm was at war with England. That made it hard to carry out arrests and seizures in full. Some lands that were once of the temple passed later to the hospital. Records are thin and late. Claims that bands of Templars fought at Bannockburn or that treasure crossed the sea to those shores belong to later romance. They rest on legend, not on reliable charter or ledger. In the Crown of Aragon, the story pointed to a future. Templar castles stood on the edge of mountain and plain. When the first orders of arrest came, some houses made a short stand, then yielded. The king asked the Pope to let him gather the lands into a new order that would protect the frontier. Rome agreed. The Order of Montesa was approved in the year 1317. It followed a strict rule. It took men and lands that once bore the red cross of the temple. It guarded coasts and passes and kept the line of defense. In Portugal, the crown found a way to save what could be saved while obeying the law from Rome. The Order of Christ took shape with papal consent in the year 1319. It accepted former Templars after review of their lives. It took the fortress and the round church at Tomar. It held other castles and estates. In later centuries, it helped to fund ships that sailed under Prince Henry. The red cross on white sails that we see in paintings of caravels belongs to that order. This does not make the Order of Christ a simple rebirth of the temple. It is a new body within the church. It does show that in one realm, the skills, the buildings, and some of the men found a new use. In Castile and in Leon, the path led most often to the hospital. Local orders and bishops asked for shares. Kings negotiated and bargained. Disputes over rents and rights ran for years. In Majorca, there were also transfers to the hospital. In the German lands, some property went to bishops. Some went to the hospital. The Teutonic Order at times received small parts, yet the larger stream ran to St. John, as papal words had set out. Let us return to the men who once wore the white mantle with the red cross. In France, there were prisons where time itself felt like a slow death. In England, there were cloisters where old soldiers learned the rhythm of choir and refectory. In Aragon and in Portugal, there were new cloaks and new rules. In Italy, there were courts with long lists of names and short judgments that sent men home or sent them to penance. In Cyprus, there were brothers who had once watched the sea from a high wall. Some found places in other orders, some faded into the life of towns. The order had drawn men from many social ranks. In the end, they returned to those ranks, to farms, to crafts, to quiet prayer. Now we should speak plainly about the name and the myths that grew. Many people today say that Friday the 13th is unlucky because the arrests in France happened on France the 13th of October. The date is true. The link as the cause of the fear is not proven. Scholars point to older roots for fear of that number and that day. It is safe to say that the arrest was on a Friday, and that later minds tied a deep fear to a sharp event. We should also speak of links to Freemasonry. Modern groups that use the name Templar began in the 18th century. They are not a direct line from the medieval order. They are part of a later world that loved pageantry and old names. This does not rob them of meaning for their members. It only places them in their proper time. Think of the houses and the stone again. Temple Church in London still stands. In the years after the suppression, it passed to the care of the hospital. Its round nave recalls a shape first used by Crusaders to echo the Holy Sepulchre. In Paris, the great compound of the temple became a royal store, and later, in other times, a prison. In Tomar, the round church raised by the Templars stood at the heart of the new order of Christ. Look at Montesa in the late light. Low walls, a calm sky, and a narrow road that winds up from the plain. The red cross on a white field no longer flies from these places, but the stone keeps the memory of men who prayed, drilled, traded, and rode out. Law made much of this change. The Pope sent out the solemn words that closed the old order. Another bull said the lands should go to the hospital. In England, the Crown and Parliament passed orders to make the move. In Aragon and in Portugal, new orders were created by papal consent. Lawyers wrote titles, stewards took inventories, priors counted grain and rent. Move the eye from the heat of a stake in Paris to a cold room where a clerk sits by a chest and reads from a roll. That is also a scene in this story. History is not only an axe and a fire, it is also a key turned in a lock and a ledger balanced at dusk. Let us see one life in more detail. He is a sergeant from a small house in England. He has cared for horses and helped drill new riders. When the order falls, he is told to leave the house and live in a monastery. He takes off his sword and his belt. He walks a few miles on a wet road. A monk gives him a bed, a rough cloak, and work in the garden. He joins the choir and sings the simple lines he can learn. He eats bread and pottage at a long table. He keeps his vow of chastity and prays at dawn. He hears news of a transfer of lands and does not care. He dies in his 60s and is buried by the north wall with a plain stone set over him. His name is not in books, yet he is part of the answer to what happened after. What of the money that once ran through the order's hands? In many places it became the money of the hospital. Rents came in, repairs were paid for. Pilgrims and the poor were fed at houses that cared for the sick. Ships were supplied. In France, the crown drew deep from the stores. In England, records show how income from mills and markets went to St. John. Accounts written in careful Latin note candles, wax, cloth, timber, and arms. This is dull on the page. It is very real in the world. It means warmth for the sick, tools for repairs, and bread for those who came to the door. The fall of the order also teaches a hard lesson about power. Fear can shape law. Rumor can shape courts. In France, pressure and pain gave the crown the words it wanted to hear. The Pope, caught between a strong king and his own duty, chose to end the order for the sake of peace in Christendom. Outside France, the storm was weaker, so the end was less cruel. This is why so many brothers lived and why land passed by charters and not by flames. Guard that lesson. It is not only about the past. There is a line that runs from the Templars into later ages through symbol, not through blood. The red cross on white became a sign for courage and loss. Writers in later times told stories where the old name stood for purity or for secrecy. Painters filled canvases with nights against dark skies. Some churches kept small memorials that recalled the order. Men in the 18th century took the word Templar and placed it in new rites that meant something to them in their time. They did not carry on a chain of command from the past. They carried on an echo. Return to the island in the Seine. The fire burns low. The crowd breaks and goes home. The city creaks like a ship as night turns colder. The order is gone in law, yet its traces remain. In Portugal, a new banner hangs at Tomar. In Aragon, a new badge is sewn on a new mantle. In London, a new prior stands in a round church and counts candles. On a hill in Cyprus, a shepherd hears the bell of a chapel where Templars once knelt. The Red Cross has become a memory. Memories do not die. They change shape. So what happened after the fall? Men found new lives. Property found new masters. Myths found new homes in books and in halls. We can point to firm things. The Pope suppressed the order in 1312. A bull said that the hospital should take the lands. In Portugal, a new order was approved in 1319. In Aragon, a new order was founded in 1317. In England, transfers took years. A great account written in 1338 shows the hospital in full control of former temple property. Beyond these firm points, there are whispers and hopes and later stories. They belong to romance, not to the ledgers that men wrote in brown ink. Why did the order fall? It is not the heart of our tale, yet the reason shapes the end. Kings feared debt. Crowds like dark tales about those who hold power. The order had lost its main task when the Holy Land was lost. That made it weak. A king who needed gold and a cause found both in their name. The Pope chose peace with a strong crown rather than a long fight. From those choices came courts, prisons, and transfers. This is the ground on which our answer stands. There is another lesson in the way fear and story blend. People say the fear of Friday the 13th comes from the arrests. Others say the fear is older and has many roots. The safe answer is that the arrest took place on that Friday, and the deeper fear is older and unclear. People also say that the Templars became Masons in secret. The truth is that links to Freemasonry begin in the 18th century. They are not a straight line from the medieval order. This is not an insult. It is a careful fact. Let us hold a last image. A round church in London at dusk, candles burn by old tombs. A clerk with a key turns to leave and pulls the heavy door. A tower at Tomar glows in evening light while swallows circle above. A line of low walls at Montesa faces a calm sky and a wide plain. A mill wheel in a village that once paid rent to the temple throws foam where the stream leaps. In a monastery garden, an old man in a plain cloak ties a vine to a stake. He straightens and looks at the sky. He says a short prayer. He is one of thousands who lived on after the fall. He is part of the answer, as much as any king or any bull from Rome. History is a house with many rooms. One door closed when the Pope suppressed the temple. Other doors opened, not all at once, not all in the same place. Through those doors walked men who found new paths. Some wore black cloaks with a white cross with 8 points. Some wore new mantles in new orders. Some wore the plain brown of monks. Some wore no habit at all and took up tools in barns. The story of what happened after the fall is a story of change without thunder. It is a story of paper, of seals, of stone, and of small acts done by patient hands. It is a story that ends not in fire, but in work and in memory. Think of that as the light fades. Think of a key turning in a lock. Think of a monk counting loaves. Think of a steward writing a list of flocks. Think of a banner in a round church. Think of a knight who lays down his sword and picks up a spade. These are the quiet answers to our question. These are the signs of what happened after they fell. These are the things that lasted when the flames on a small island died and the crowd went home.